Greetings, Raised community. Brent coming in live with today's guest, Marie Schultz, who serves as Vice President for Development and Alumni Relations at the University of Texas at Arlington. Welcome, Marie.
Thank you, Brent. So good to see you.
It is great to see you. And in seeing you, I am poignantly brought back to our initial connection, which was in an airport as you were running to your gate after, I'm going to call it an AGB conference or something along those lines. Do you remember that?
I do. I was trying to connect with you that entire conference, although you didn't know that I was trying to connect with you. I had spotted you across the room. I was having a desire to implement a DXO program, and every time I found you, you were with someone else, a client or somebody else from the conference. And so I thought, well, that window of opportunity ended. I was going to need to follow up with you. And of course, a million other things were going through my mind. But as I was walking through the airport, there you were without anybody next to you on your phone or doing something. And I thought, this is my chance. It was fortuitous. I thought I've got to go in this direction. So
it was great. No, it was super fun. You don't always remember, how you meet and connect with somebody, but that's one I'll never forget. And so we'll come back to some of those themes, but I got to start with, who are you? Take me back to junior year of high school. Who was that, Marie? What were you into? And what led you to UC Riverside?
Okay, well, so junior year of high school, I was a varsity tennis player. I played basketball. I ran track. I was a relay runner and I was a long jumper. But I was also really focused and driven on getting through high school and getting into college. I worked a couple of jobs. I was trying to save money. My mindset was get out of high school, get to college. I had a father at home that was sick, that couldn't work, and my mother was the breadwinner. And he often said to me, thank God for mom's college degree, because otherwise we'd be destitute. And he always told me, you as a woman need to have a degree so that you can make money and not depend on anyone else. So that was really had a sort of left an indelible mark on me. And so even in high school, I was like, what's the next step? What's the next step? And so eyes were set on college, but nowhere in particular. I just knew that I was going to college and very likely thought I was going to a community college. And that was it.
2 points. Where specifically were you? Where was high school?
Okay.
And of all those athletic experiences, what was your most poignant or memorable moment?
So I grew up in Corona, California, and I went to high school in Riverside, California.
Okay.
So as a freshman, when I arrived at my high school, Notre Dame High School in Riverside, I tried out for the tennis team, and I thought I was a moderate tennis player. I didn't really have any gauge of where my skill set was. And I was instantly number 3 singles with the rest of the seniors. And so that to me was such a boost for my just self-awareness and sense of self. I thought, wow, I can compete with individuals who are 4 years older than I am at that level. And so that really sparked me in a very unique way.
I love it. I was fortunate or unfortunate as a freshman in high school to have a similar experience starting varsity on the football team, but my dream had been to be a running back. That's what I had done all through middle school. I was so excited to be a running back in high school. And the head coach sat me down. He said, hey, good news. I need you on varsity. I was so excited. He said, I need you to play on the line. And my soul was crushed. I was like, I cannot be a lineman. So maybe not quite as seamless of a transition as that, but I love the tennis memory. And so you were saying that you were thinking maybe community college as a starter. You're in Riverside. I also just had to learn, given how deeply connected Riverside is to your life, what river is it beside? I found out it's the Santa Ana River, so I've added that to my my fact book. But tell me about what led you to UC Riverside?
And by the way, the Santa Ana River doesn't have any water in it. So that's another fact you can add.
On Google Maps, it sort of looks wide and blue, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, there's no water. Riverside's in the desert.
Yeah.
So if that gives you some context. So I was, I knew I was going to go to a community college. I was going to go to college, thought community college was easiest. Riverside Community College was what I was thinking about. And when I was in high school, my two best friends, they're twins. Their older brother, Mark, who was a graduate student at the University of California, Riverside, was talking to us about college. And my two best friends had their sights set on all kinds of different great universities. And I told him I was going to go to community college, and he said, you're University of California material. And I thought, oh, wow, no one said that to me before. I mean, my mom had a college degree, but didn't talk about sort of types of institutions and what that meant and what a college experience meant. And so I thought, wow, okay, I'm University of California material. So I applied to colleges, I applied to many institutions in the UC system, and I got into Santa Barbara, and I got into San Diego, and I got into UCR. It was in my backyard. And I didn't know how fortunate I was at that time to have a UC in my backyard, but I've always sort of touted that as being, very fortunate to me, because as I was looking at college costs, I realized I can't go away to Santa Barbara or to, San Diego. I needed to live at home or live locally. And even if those are expensive places to live. And so I knew I needed to support myself. And so Riverside was where I landed. And at the time, I remember thinking, no, I wanted to go away to college. But now when I look back, it was exactly where I was supposed to be, because it launched my entire career. It was just life-changing and transformational.
Well, oftentimes, right, there's this meandering path where at some point the world of advancement somehow gets on your radar, and then it sucks you in, and you wake up 20 years later. But in your case, it was a pretty quick
Oh,
transition, and one that was immediate and persistent.
yes. So I had friends whose mother worked in the development office at UC Riverside, and she said, "Come see me your first day on campus." And so I did. And Georgia Elliott and Judy Lair hired me. I was the first student that wasn't a student caller to work in the development office. I worked on with the prospect research team, and I answered phones and filed foundation annual reports in paper files and did those kinds of things, and worked in the development office for the entire 4 years of my undergraduate degree, and got to do lots of different things. I actually worked with the chancellor quite a bit. I would drive him and his wife to and from the airport or to different events. So I had all this one-on-one time with the chancellor in his car, and having conversations with he and his wife. I was a student that would work, trustee events and alumni events, and I'd be handing out, name tags. And inevitably, I'd be asked to sit at a table where a donor didn't show up. And so I would play the student role. At first, that was very scary for me. And then I realized these trustees and these donors just want me to be a student. They just want me
Right.
to talk about my experience. I get to play student. Um,
Trustees are people too, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, and I really had no, I didn't really understand what we did. I mean, development seemed like a far-fetched idea. I didn't have a family that was, I mean,
Right.
we were, we gave to our church and those kinds of things, but philanthropy was a far-fetched idea. But I had this deep immersion as an undergraduate in understanding not just, answering phones, but doing the student work as a student, interacting with trustees. And so
Yeah.
there was a comfort level I had there that was really was a great experience.
I love the story. And I just had some friends, sort of college decision season, and some friends shared that their child decided to go to Auburn. And they were asking me, hey, do you have any experience with Auburn? Know the team there, love Auburn. And they're like, well, what do you think? Any advice for him as he gets settled in? And I basically just said, without knowing your story, do what Marie did. I was like, get over to the Alumni
Yeah.
Association, get to the foundation. If there's a job, get a job. If there's not, volunteer.
Hmm.
It is the absolute best way to both make some money if you need to, but
Hmm.
more important, build relationships, build a network, get exposure to really amazing work and people. And it's so rare that people do that, right? You think about all the campus jobs that people take, or the side hustles that they pick up, or they're driving for Uber, whatever it is. and people just don't appreciate. I would argue the number one spot to be on campus is in the development office as a student.
I agree, but I'm biased, but I agree.
And I think importantly, that doesn't just mean student caller, right? That may have been the traditional entry point, which I also think historically was an excellent way to build sales skills and also get exposure to the alumni network and so forth. But there are other ways, student ambassadors, it sounds like the kind of work you were doing. But I'll be honest, Marie, I do wonder, as this industry has evolved, clearly the call center today is not what it was 20 years ago. That has, when I think about the 200 plus leaders I've interviewed on this podcast, the number of people that were like, I started as a student caller, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
I do wonder, what is the 2025 version of your path, of the student caller path, as the call center continues to decline, if you will?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good sort of question to ponder. And I think about just here at UTA, the students that we've brought in who are interns, who are very specifically working on our giving day, or helping us with very specific projects and understanding and doing rotations around, not just in development and not just in alumni relations, and just creating exposure, because we need to think about pipeline. What's the pipeline look like? And I didn't go to school to be a fundraiser. I have an environmental science degree. And honestly, I did not want to be a student caller. I looked at those student callers and I thought, I'm not asking people for money. I am not going to ask for people for money that seemed taboo and weird. And because I hadn't had that sort of experiential piece. And so I stayed away from the call center with a 10-foot pole.
So you're studying environmental science, but you're diving right in as a student worker, getting exposure to all kinds of people and experiences. And it's one thing to go see your friend's mom who is there. And at that point, I remember first day on the job, at that point in your life, you don't know which way is up. Like, you're just kind of doing the thing. But then with 4 years going by, at some point, you start to understand and build intuition for, oh, that's how this all works. Or maybe you start to see that many people love giving to an institution. It's not weird. It's not uncomfortable. In fact, it's motivating and inspiring. Like, just tell me, were there any inflection points where it started to click for you?
So it took a while for me. I was an environmental science major, and the reason why I was an environmental science major, because I wanted something that had an interdisciplinary focus that would be really applied, like that I could go out into the workforce and get a job with. And I thought that was the best fit. And so up until like my senior year, I really wanted to pursue the environmental science path. I mean, I grew up in a family where my dad geology was his like pastime. We would identify rocks in the high Sierras. So this environmental science piece was exciting, and I loved all of it. And so I had gotten an internship with a company called MCon, not Enron. This is MCon, which was a solid waste consulting firm. And I thought, okay, this is my in. I'm gonna, finish off my time in development, and I'm gonna do this internship. And it was interesting. I enjoyed it up until a point. I didn't really realize what solid waste consulting was until we started doing field work, whereby I found myself in a landfill in a Tyvek suit with a clipboard in my hand, counting categories of waste as it came off of a truck, and diapers, textiles, wood, construction debris. And I thought, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. So I continued to pursue other types of avenues on the environmental science side, and doors just kept closing for me. And as I was about to graduate, these two individuals who had hired me originally, Georgia and Judy, created a job for me. And I also had a real interest in the data and programming side of things. I was really science minded. And so they created a position for me as a prospect management and tracking coordinator. We had a research function. We had nobody that was helping gift officers manage their prospects and sort of coordinate proposals and things like that. And I thought that was it was great. I created a database. We weren't coordinated with our database. And I had an opportunity to work directly with the gift officers, not just in creating bios and profiles, but actually understanding their challenges and how they did their work. And so that was a different perspective for me because there was a not a there was it kind of removed the disconnect, which I see sometimes on the research side and the fundraising side in terms of how we get our work done and what are our challenges and what's possible in each of those worlds. And so I was able to tie those together in that type of a role. And so I did that for quite a while, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to be a DBA. I'm going to be on the advancement services side. I got Oracle certified. I loved writing code. I just, that whole like puzzle piece of database work just was exciting to me. And so I was moving in that direction. And I always say that the across the hall were the fundraisers. So into my office walked the director of major gifts one day, and she said, "You ever thought about fundraising?" And I said, not really. And she said, "I think you'd be a great fundraiser." And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, what are you thinking?" And she said, "Well, we have this associate director of annual giving position open." And essentially, it was like a director of annual giving. There wasn't anybody else doing annual giving. And I said, "Well, I could do that. Annual giving seems like it has a beginning and an end, and there's a plan involved, and it's, people in mass. I'm not spending 18 to 24 months working on a major gift. I can, the production pieces, I can see how that looks." So it felt like it was in my wheelhouse. And so I said yes. And I took on that job and had a chance to work with, there was a subcommittee of the foundation board that was focused on annual giving at that time, and got to work again with the same trustees that I had been working with as a student, and began to see that the relationship building piece just transcends. I felt very comfortable engaging with those individuals in a one-on-one way. And so when the next person came to me, and I didn't apply for these jobs, I just, there was somebody else came to me, Susan Harlow, who was the director of development, or executive director of development at the time, came to me and said, "You ever thought about a job in an academic unit as a frontline fundraiser?" And I thought, oh, I don't know. I mean, that just seems so different than annual giving. Here I am doubting my abilities. I had to have people constantly say, "I think I can see you in that role. Like, do you want to try it?" And I said, "Okay, what college or what unit?" And she said, "Education." I thought, "Oh, education. Okay, perfect. There's a new dean there. He came from Syracuse. He knows how to fundraise. It seems innocuous enough, like it's not the biggest college. It's something I can bite off. I can try that." And so I took on that role and learned a lot. I had a phenomenal dean who taught me how to be a gift officer and support a dean. And I think that was really, really important for me because I learned how to do that frontline fundraising work with him alongside, and he taught me how to be a gift officer.
Well, I've got to ask, because that was roughly 10 years of you resisting being a fundraiser
Yeah,
because you had all of these preconceptions and discomfort and ideas.
yeah.
What was it like month one, first 6 months on the job? Were you just like, "Oh, this is great," or it's kind of uncomfortable like I thought it would be?
Well, I'm very analytical. So I was the new gift officer that fell into the overanalyze, over prepare. I had
Create a
a,
spreadsheet, get the
yeah,
portfolio. Yeah.
and the aha moment for me, this will probably sound kind of funny, but the aha moment for me was my colleague Evie Toll. She had a skeleton arm, a small little skeleton, like a Halloween skeleton arm on her bulletin board, and it had a post-it note on it that said, "Cultivated to death." And I thought, okay, that's it. I mean, really, cultivated to death. That's, how often do we sort of just churn our wheels or have the ability and the propensity to do that without making the next move and step? And I thought, you know what? I don't have to be perfect. I just have to do it. And so that's sort of the transitional kind of moment. And then it felt like riding a bike. Then I really, I always fought being an extrovert. I was, "Oh, I'm an introvert," and I have friends that say, "Yeah, no, you're not. You're an extrovert. Go do it. Go do what you need to do." And so that was a big aha moment for me.
So you said that the dean taught you how to be a gift
Yeah,
officer. How does one be a gift officer?
that's a great question. Uh, you know, he taught me how to build relationships and think about meaningful connections, and the importance of being genuine, being yourself, and being trustworthy, following through with what you say you're going to do. And those components, in addition to, lighting a spark, igniting something in a donor that helps them see the impact that they can have on an institution and how that can be transformational, not only to the university, but to themselves, was what I learned in that space. And that's how I would describe what being a fundraiser is.
Can I ask, when you think about very either memorable people, memorable meetings, meetings gone horribly wrong or horribly right, or everything in between, like what are just some of the poignant road warrior memories that maybe stand out?
So I had a colleague who was a regional development officer who worked for me. Her name was Allie, and we plan trips all over. When I was at the University of California, Riverside, we had alumni all over the country and would often go to New York. Um, and she and I we'd sort of, when we would prep for our meetings, we would play a bit of a game with each other and say, okay, the first person to work in the libraries buys lunch, or the first person who's able to bring up the new center for, fill in the blank, or the College of Business School, groundbreaking. Whoever can work that in first, gets lunch or something like that. So it was a great game.
This sounds like a high school drama improv group or
Yeah,
something.
but it was a good way to keep us on our toes and focused, and remember that we needed to make certain points. And so and then of course, we've had lots of great meetings. I remember one, this it was a publisher in New York who was meeting with us, and he had a bone to pick with California textbooks or something. And we walk into his office, and he sort of opens up a broom closet that has a conference room in it. And I looked at my colleague and I said, "Is that a vacuum there? And are we sitting in a broom closet?" And she said, "Yeah." And he proceeded to tell us how unhappy he was with, you run into these things, right? And you smile and you bring up the libraries in the center, and you work it into the
Right.
conversation.
And I would imagine that, that's an example where your skin gets thicker over time and things that maybe phased you at that point are just almost non-factors at this point. Is that fair?
Absolutely. And you get more comfortable sharing those stories, because I think it's really important. And I say this to new gift officers that, especially new to the profession, or who don't have much experience and are gaining experience on my team, that I didn't hire you because you're an expert at this. I hired you for your potential, and you're going to fall on your face at times. It's just going to happen, but you're going to learn from that. And I want you to come back and talk about it,
Yeah.
because then we're going to figure out what that looks like moving forward. We all have sort of battle wounds and scars and things that have gone wrong. Because you can't predict every situation, but you learn how to handle them. You learn when to speak and when not to speak, and when to smile and when to be empathetic, and sort of, how to handle those situations. And that's just experiential. It really is.
Any, I don't know, objection handling 101 that you share with folks, or I guess there's a spectrum of scenarios and the root cause of the frustration, but I don't know, any best practice that you found helpful?
So, you do run across alumni and donors who are unhappy about things. There's things that have happened before you arrived. There may be things that have happened on your watch, that are challenging. And an empathetic ear, understanding, that something someone experienced is their experience. There's no need to defend or to create dialogue that enhances or amplifies how they're feeling. To just take the time to listen and be empathetic is all you can do. And the goal isn't to get a gift or change their mind. The goal is to demonstrate consistency,
Yeah.
follow up, doing what you say you're going to do, that you're around, that you're here. And then I always follow that up with, that's why we want you to stay here at this institution, continue to build relationships, and think about a career path here, because it's so important for consistency with relationships.
Well, it's interesting because, you have one of the um, longest tenures of any leader in the industry, flat out at UC Riverside. We'll talk about your transition away, but it must have you see all the studies about how quickly people move jobs and switching from one institution to another. You don't see as many stories about the benefits of staying at a place 10 or 20 years the way you did. The institutional knowledge, the relationships, the things that must have just become second nature to you that I'm sure sort of compounded over time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so early in my career at UCR, about 5 years in, or no, actually, it was even earlier than that. It was probably 2 years in. I had a colleague say to me, "You really need to spread your wings and fly because you'll never uh, grow in your career. You got to leave this place. You can't stay." And I thought, oh, what am I doing wrong? It was deflating for me. But I continued to grow. I continued to have opportunities fall in
Yeah.
front of me, and I seized them. I had people challenge me and tell me they saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself, and so kept making that journey. And at some point, when I was hired as the Associate Vice Chancellor, I remember thinking back about that comment and thinking that was so wrong. It was so wrong because this was the institution I needed to stay at. It was my alma mater. I had a chance to help that university launch its very first philanthropic fundraising campaign and close it and see the impact of that, like how that transformed our
Yeah.
university from we became an AAU institution. We elevated our student success profile. I mean, all of that in part the fundraising work that we did, and then the relationships, the trustee relationships, the donor relationships. I mean, those changed over time as I was in different roles, but there was a consistency and an understanding. I mean, I knew all the donors. I knew what had happened and what had transpired. And so, after, 27 years there, I was counting my 4 years as an undergraduate and then coming to UTA, I felt flat-footed. Oh, I don't know all the donors. I don't know all the
Yeah.
backstory. I have to kind of be okay with that. But
Well,
yeah, it was
I
a
want
good
to
experience.
I want to talk about that shift, but before I do, I have to just share that Peter Hayashida was my guest on episode 74.
Okay.
And I will never forget, I had met Peter previously, but I didn't know him that well. And one of the reasons I love doing this is you literally feel like, I am getting to know you better, right?
Sure.
We've met at times, but I know so much more about you than I did 31 minutes ago. And I felt the same way about Peter. And what Peter described, I mean, the passion with which he described his connection to the UCR mission was remarkable. And there's a lot of mission-driven people that I've interviewed, but like it just really stuck with me about the student profile, the growth of the institution, the importance of its position in the region. And honestly, Marie, he was describing you. He was describing the kid in high school with the single parent or
Made me cry.
the breadwinner, the mother breadwinner who has a father with a tough situation, who's like on the cusp of what, like he was talking about you. And I really I'm just struck by that memory. And I also know you spent a lot of time with Peter and must have felt that too.
Yeah, I mean, I worked for him for 12 years, his entire tenure at UC Riverside, and I didn't work directly for him. I only worked under him for two of those years, or a year and a half. But I was on his team, and I was really impressed by his commitment to our mission. I mean, he could have gone anywhere. He could have left UCR at any moment in time and been recruited anywhere. But he was in it to see it through the end. He was committed to that campaign. He was committed to elevating our institutional profile. He was committed to the students that we were educating and the research that we were doing, and he was committed to his team. And that was always so impressive. And when I think about one thing that has really shaped me as a professional, as a younger professional, I always thought, how are they making decisions? How do the leaders of this organization make decisions? You can't, you're not behind closed doors with the chancellor and with the vice chancellor as a major gift officer. But when I got to the point in my career where I was behind those closed doors, and I saw that he was the same person he was behind the closed doors as he was in front of everyone else, I realized how much integrity, how important it is to have integrity, how important it is to be that person and make decisions publicly the same way you make them privately. That was transformational for me, and I will always be appreciative of that example.
And so all of that said, in 2022, you had the opportunity to assume the leadership position at UT Arlington.
Yes.
Your entire life next to nearby Corona, California.
Yeah.
And that is a huge decision. And so just tell me about getting there. And I don't know, just that I want to know more about what led you to take the leap.
Yeah. There was sort of an inflection point it was an inflection point for me. I had climbed to leading the team that I had a chance to build over all of those years. And I was at a point where, I was starting to consider what the next steps were for me. And the stars began to align. I was sort of reflecting on my family. My children were at an age where my son was going into high school and my daughter was going into middle school. So that was a good point in time to think about a change. My husband's work situation was such that a change would work for us. And so I began to think about and explore opportunities. And when and I have to say that UTA, it was an institution that had been on my radar. They were part of a study from the New America Foundation back in 2012 that where they were grouped. UTA was grouped with UC Riverside as an institution on the rise in terms of student success. And so I already knew that UTA looked a lot like UCR, and so that the position was open and I pursued it. And as I was interviewing, I was struck by the similarities. I thought, okay, I could see myself here. But I was also moved by the people. There was an amazing team here and a phenomenal new president. She is a powerhouse fundraiser and a phenomenal new provost. And I said to my husband, I was like, this is our moment. This is our moment. And so let's do it. So we jumped in.
I love it. And so it's one thing to take that leap and you can get a window from the outside looking in. It's another thing to show up. What are some of the biggest surprises, unexpected positives, challenges you didn't anticipate? Like, how's it going?
Oh, it's been a whirlwind. So I've been here for 2.5 years. I walked in we are a 130-year-old institution, 280,000 alums, majority of which live in the Metroplex, where we're raising 20 million a year flatlined for the last 10 years, and a team of about 38 with 20 open positions. And
Well, this is the right podcast for you to be talking about those 20 open positions if they're still
yeah,
open. Yeah.
no, we are now a team of 72.
Amazing. Wow.
In 2.5 years. So this was a full court press on hiring because first day on the job, first conversation with my president was, we're going to move toward launching UTA's very first comprehensive philanthropic campaign. And I thought, that sounds familiar. I've done that. I've done that before. And so I just kind of pulled out my playbook and realized we don't have the right capacity. We don't have enough capacity in technology, advancement services, annual giving, planned giving, gift officers in the academic units. And at the same time, I have a provost hiring. new deans who were saying, "Where's my development support?" So we were pushing quickly, but there was a lot of, it wasn't just hiring to hire. I had to do a lot of assessments. I needed to understand the talent we had here and really balancing because I needed them, the talent that was here that wanted to stay, I wanted them to stay. So we did a lot of shifting. I would say that every single person on this team has had an opportunity to either rethink or redefine relative to needs of the institution, their roles, or move into new roles. I have one person in alumni relations who moved into being a frontline fundraiser. She was looking at a job somewhere else. I said, do frontline fundraising here. You know this institution. We can help you be successful. So a lot of shell moving in that first 18 months to get to a team of which is now 72. And then getting the institution, building relationships across the institution. I mean, our reputation, the development, alumni relations reputation was a little meh. We were, I have great team members here, and the AVPs and senior leaders who have stayed have been like my lifeline to understanding this university, and they're still here, many of which have been promoted and jobs have changed and work portfolios have expanded. But we just didn't, we just weren't, we just didn't have the relationships. And I had a really siloed team. And they were siloed out of a need to survive. There was a interim vice president who did a wonderful job keeping everything together, but they didn't have for 3 years. There was no sitting vice president for 3 years, and so they were all just working to work and keep the ship afloat. And really amazed that they were able to sustain a $20 million a year fundraising operation. So I got to come in and help work with them on a vision for how we can right size their portfolios, tear down silos, create collaboration, build the culture, be more transparent, and then think about how we're developing staff and bringing them along and ensuring that once we get to that campaign, that we're not in this 18-month cycle with gift officers, that we can tout along tenure and all of that. So those were some of the things I walked into.
Well, you seem like you're settled well. That being said, I've got to challenge you a little bit because that seems like a lot to take on. Okay.
Yeah.
And, to have 27 years in one place, to come into a new place. So what have you got to figure out? A new city. You've got to figure out a new team.
Right.
You've got to figure out growing to 72 people. You've got to also get to know other leadership team members. You've got to get to know faculty and deans. You've got to get to know the donor community, the corporate community. I mean, you had like 27 years to do all of that, last time. How do you can't
you're making my heart
I know. I'm sorry. We're going to move through this. We're going to move through this into a safe space soon. But for right now, I got to ask, what advice do you have for other leaders, or even if you could go back in time to talk to yourself 2.5 years ago, because you can't do all of those things well at the same time. And so how do you balance the internal, external peer relationship building?
I think you have to quickly build trust with your closest leaders. I needed to do that immediately. I needed to understand where they were and what you just described is a heavy lift. And I needed the people who were closest to me involved in the process because I didn't know what I didn't know.
That almost sounds like you went on discovery visits with your colleagues.
I did. I spent the first 3 months interviewing and spending time with every single staff member to ask them about what they do, how they do it, what are the issues and challenges, got a real good sense for who was ready for a next step, what we were going to do with them, how we were going to help them professionally. Did the same with all of we had a lot of new vice presidents too. So there was a big learning curve for those individuals as well. But just kind of pounded the pavement, developing internal relationships while balancing all of the external relationships. And really for me, when I look back, I had a lot of confidence in what I was doing at UCR, and I realized that I was ready and I just needed to trust the process. I just needed to do what I knew was right in terms of building relationships, begin to put processes in place, triage things, and decide, I know that the stewardship function isn't where it needs to be, and I know that our giving page and our website isn't where it needs to be, but that's going to be year two. That's not going to be this year. Or we need to add people in this area. That's year three. And so to be able to articulate why this now and that tomorrow and what step gets you, because as I reorganized my team, we actually went through it wasn't just one reorganization, it was iterative. It was like three reorganizations because you had to hire the person here before you hired here and here. And then we moved, and then we split a portfolio again and moved people over and managing expectations, that eventually this is going to move into this area. And so creating a vision, getting my closest team members engaged in that so that they could articulate that. And that's really how I did it.
Tell me about UTA 130. Sounds like it's going to be a good party.
It is going to be a good party. We are excited to sort of look back at our history, where we've been and where we're headed to. We're going to have a big celebration in September, which was marks our actual anniversary. And this will all align with the work that we're doing to launch our first campaign, which we're currently in the silent phase of, and hope to, in the next couple of years, be able to announce publicly this overall campaign. But really excited about that piece because we have donors and alumni who've been waiting for this, who've been saying, when are you doing this? So it's going to be great to get them involved at the most significant levels.
I love it. Wishing you the best on that. All right, I got to ask you a couple points, and then I know we gotta start to wrap up here. But you shared that you were sort of continually on the fence about investments in annual giving, and that you need innovation. And then you also talked about the workforce of the future, which kind of links back to what is the future of the call center talent pipeline, and UTA is maybe part of that solution with your philanthropy degree. And so just maybe talk a little bit about that professionalization of the industry and the degree work that you all are doing alongside your questions around annual giving.
Yeah, so I'm not on the fence about pipeline building, and I'm not on the fence about the function that annual giving plays within, a healthy institutional structure, development, comprehensive development operation. It's just that the investments you make in annual giving are significant. There's some significant dollars, especially traditional models of annual giving, and even investing in technology. I mean, that's not cheap. And so, I look at everything we do as a pilot. Like, we're going to try this out, and if it doesn't work, then we'll move in a different direction, and we won't say we failed. We'll just say we're going to try something different. And so I'm always looking for opportunities to innovate and do something different. And developing a DXO program, working with EverTrue. Was like something I really wanted to do at my last institution. So coming here and being able to actually do it has been really transformational. One of our DXOs just closed a $250,000 planned gift. I mean, like, those are the stories I want to tell. And those are really awesome things. And I'm in this temporary space right now. So my office is really close to the DXO. So I have this really cool opportunity for the next 6 months. I hear them working and I love it. I love hearing them on the phone and engaging, because I don't get to do that. They don't know that I'm eavesdropping. They will now that when they watch this. But so that's been one of those boxes I've been able to check in terms of, okay, it's a significant investment. As I look at the data and I understand where we're headed, I'm certain this is going to be transformational. But I also think about, okay, the future of AI, and I know many of your guests have talked about that. It's just a constant conversation. But how do we use the AI in a way that allows us to do the high touch pieces that are more transactional on the annual giving side, to create more bandwidth for what is your bread and butter, which are your major and all principal gifts. And then to that end, UTA has a philanthropy bachelor's degree in our communications department. I think one of the only one in Texas, and I think there's only 3 in the United States. And so we've got this unique opportunity to really lean into this group and engage with these alumni, but engage with our students. So as part of our Day of Giving, our MABS Day, the current cohort of those undergraduates interned for us. All of them did projects related to MABS Day and helping us build out social media components and working on different digital platforms and doing outreach so they got to be as part of a class project engaged in that space. And so thinking about creating exposure for individuals like that, and we're fortunate to have a degree, but this is across the board. I mean, any institution could do this relative to small groups of students. Getting them involved in that space as part of their educational experience was a no-brainer for us in terms of helping to build a pipeline of
Yes.
overall future talent.
I love it. I love the student pipeline, and certainly part of why we're excited about the DXO concept is it created sort of a junior gift officer on-ramp into the industry. And you just think about, I don't know which DXO closed the $250,000 gift you were just referring to, but they're going to be really well positioned for a career in philanthropy if they decide to continue to do it. So we've always talked about how do you build the donor pipeline and the talent pipeline in concert? And it sounds like that's starting to be realized.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And having alums work for your institution, having junior gift officers see that there's a career path, those things are critically important. They're just really important.
Well, I hope they're all listening right now. I hope they all hear your career path and they get really excited about where this could lead if they stick with it. You brought up AI. It is a super exciting moment. And I feel like philanthropy is incredibly well positioned. When I think about the work, even the kind of work that you were doing as that, research type role coming out of college, there is going to be such a radical increase in efficiency in the minutia that should free up far more time for the actual relationship building. And that is what I'm excited about. So that even as we look at the way that a DXO is working today or a gift officer is working today, there is still so much manual hunting and pecking that is going to be transformed, streamlined. And then I think the opportunity to look at any given donor as a unique human being with a unique set of experiences and digital breadcrumbs that can tell you about who they are, and then to be able to mash that up against UTA 130 or whatever the campaign pillars or priorities are, or whatever the endowed and restricted funds may be, so that for every donor, we've got a unique starting point that isn't going to be 100% correct. We're still going to need to do the discovery work, but maybe we're 70 or 80% of the way there versus starting at zero in the past. That's what I hope.
Yeah, yeah. And I think back about my comments to you about being overly analytical and researching myself into a corner before
cultivated to death.
Cultivated to death. I think about the ways that AI can remove that. I don't have to do that, right?
Yeah, they'll still be alive. It's going to be
right. Exactly. They'll still be alive so that you can, ask for it.
Right.
100%.
Okay, last thing I'll share, or just maybe get your perspective on, is we last connected at the Case District 4 conference. You were on a great panel that Carl Miller-Lugo from UTSA hosted, David Onion. I'm trying to remember everybody else that was on the panel, but it was like, whoa, didn't take her much time to build friends here in Texas and in Case District 4. I found it to be just an incredibly welcoming region and community. It seems like maybe you have too.
Oh, I have. I mean, I came from District 7, a much bigger district. I remember my first case conference in District 4, looking around going, where are all the people? There's fewer people here. Well, it's a smaller district. But I have built so many relationships with VPs at other institutions and individuals across the region and within our industry. And I feel like it's, this Texas Southern hospitality, this part of the country is welcoming and opening. Not that California wasn't, but that there's just a level of interest and engagement that has been really helpful for me. And, 2.5 years later, personally and professionally have really great relationships and friendships and amongst colleagues and across the board. And so just really happy to be here, thriving and excited about the future.
All right. Well, let you conclude with, are you hiring? If people want to be in touch, I know you're active on LinkedIn. You've done a lot of hiring. Any left to do?
Oh yeah, we've got a couple of positions in corporate relations, regional development officers. We've got two unit development officers that we'll be hiring for. So yes, we are, and we are looking for great talent.
Well, I would encourage anybody listening, reach out to Marie on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Let her know you heard her on the Raise podcast. Marie, I'm so happy for you. I'm grateful to have spent this time together. Grateful for you chasing me down at that airport, and really look forward to continuing to collaborate and find ways to push things here in the right direction.
Awesome, Brent. Enjoyed my time with you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. With that, I'm going to conclude today's episode featuring Marie Schultz, who serves as Vice President for Development and Alumni Relations at the University of Texas at Arlington. Thanks, Marie, and take care, everybody.